Episode 96, Two Chaps, Many Cultures, and I'm very, very sorry. I truly apologize, and I hope you can forgive me for what's up next. Stay tuned.
Does that mean like a blanket expectation of forgiveness?
I hope so, yes, because who knows what the two of us will produce here today. Today we want to talk quickly about forgiveness across cultures. You've seen it in the image for this episode, and one of the reasons why I want to talk about this is I read an article on bbc.com last week. By the way, how's everyone started to the week? I'm diving right into the topic. Forgive me, please. I did it again. So happy Monday, everybody. And as you're joining us, wherever this is, on whatever platform, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, or better yet, LinkedIn, perhaps you're at work and this is the tool that will allow you to watch something like this, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart symbol, give us whatever symbol your platform allows us to give. Only if you like us, only if you like what we talk about here. But if you do, I think you'll be forgiven for liking us. Right, Brett?
Absolutely, yes. Good topic. Good last minute topic for a Monday morning. We've had a wonderful weekend. It's been beautiful. The weather is kind of almost spring-like. I mean, at least where I am, it has been a little rainy, but it's been great. And I love this topic because I guess we can look at through a binary set of lenses. I read the same article. It was an interesting article. I've had some experiences in some of the cultures that it mentions, so I'm all for the topic.
Maybe we should post that later on, or maybe if you have the link up, well, we should post it up here. It distincts between decisional forgiveness and emotional forgiveness, and I actually had to dive into this. I wasn't aware of this myself, and I was not aware of my cultural predisposition to forgiveness, and only after reading the article, that is something that was a blind spot for me. I will admit this. I recognize that it's part of the religion or the religious context in which I was raised, and that in my case, it's Christianity. It is Catholicism, where forgiveness is part of a belief system of an entire group that extends far beyond national cultures or whatever artificial boundaries for groups you want to draw. So in the Christian belief, forgiveness is something that is often brought to us by a higher power, by a creator power, so to say. And we have human intermediaries who act on behalf, sort of that higher power. And forgiveness is the ultimate goal, so to say, for the individual believer. And I don't know, how were you raised with guilt and forgiveness, or maybe guilt is too strong of a word, but with you did a transgression. Do you do a transgression? Do you commit a transgression? I guess you do something wrong. And how was that for you growing up, Brett? How was that dealt with?
I didn't really grow up with a traditional, particularly religious upbringing. I mean, yes, we went to church on the major holidays and things like that, but it wasn't really through that lens. But I think that later on, it was just basically you did something wrong, you said sorry for it immediately, and you asked for forgiveness, or you expected forgiveness if you said sorry. But then later on, of course, we're all exposed to the maybe some of the more or the many nuances of the different faith practices around the world that talk about this. And so, of course, there is that. I liked in that article they mentioned, you know, like you, I came to a realization that said, so if I forgive somebody, am I doing it for me, or am I doing it truly through the lens of pure forgiveness, of saying you've done me wrong, and therefore I want to release you, or am I just releasing me? More of an individualistic type of scenario. Whereas
Right.
my experience, say in China, when I had a situation that came up, not a particularly terrible transgression, I thought, but it was something that culturally I thought that I needed to make amends for, and yet the person on the other end of that was really just resistant to me giving them forgiveness, right? Because they thought they were thinking of me. They were thinking of how it would make me feel if I perceived that I did something wrong, through their sense of giving me face. They wanted to release me before I released them. It's a very nuanced, complicated process that the idea of forgiveness can be seen through.
And I think in individualistic cultures like the ones that you and I grew up in, it's about relieving or releasing a burden of guilt or bad conscience, or your personal emotional wholeness, so to say. You want to get that off of your chest, as we say in the English language. You want to relieve that burden, and you want to either you're seeking forgiveness from somebody. Maybe you actually forgive yourself for something you did wrong, but that's about emotional individual wholeness, right? In collectivist societies, in collectivist cultures, that may play a role as well, but I think it is also important, or more important than in individualist cultures, that the act of forgiving may restore the balance, the harmony of a group, right? And if it protects the balance, the emotional and the power and the hierarchical balance in a group to act out the forgiveness, then that takes center stage, or that takes the front row. And I've dealt with people from Japan or from other Asian cultures who said, well, I spoke out of forgiveness, or somebody said, I forgive you, because it preserved the harmony, but the personal wholeness was not necessarily affected by that. You might still hold a grudge internally that you will never show to the group, but in order to preserve the harmony in the group, you go through the behavioral ritual almost of forgiving publicly in order to reestablish that balance.
Yeah, and I liked in that article where they mentioned it was like putting it under the table. They referred to it as putting it under the table. It didn't go away. It was just hidden. It was just like, you know, a piece of garbage or something you didn't like on the plate that you're eating, and you made some attempt to hide it. So yeah, no, I think that's important, and I also think that it's difficult for some people to, when forgiveness, or you forgiving somebody is expected of you. When somebody confronts you about something, and you're you know, I guess 𝙏𝙬𝙤 𝘾𝙝, our great mentor, where, you know, she says, what you say or how it lands is the absolute truth. It's not your intent, right? So that's this constant learning of saying, for me, a way of asking forgiveness is a path to learning, is to saying, I want you to forgive me for what I did, what I said. How can I do it differently in the future? Because whether I think it's wrong or not, whether I think it was intentionally, or whether it was, even if it wasn't intentional to transgress, the way it was received was the absolute truth, and that we need to be cognizant of. So even if we don't think we need to ask for forgiveness or give forgiveness, we need to kind of be open to just taking our ego down a little bit, in no matter what setting. And of course, the other thing it mentioned is in the article is about language, about the use of and definitions of words, which is so varied across the world.
Yeah. Right. I noticed that religious or spiritual practices affect that quite a bit. And without going too deep into an experience that I had several years ago, it brought it to my attention. I had an interaction with a young couple of Hasidic Jewish faith who interacted with my wife and I for certain reasons. We don't need to discuss this here, but it became almost like a game where when I professed, or when I told him that we are from Germany originally, and whether that would be an issue in our further interactions, he was teasing me without. I didn't notice it at first. He was really yanking my chain, and he was prodding into what he immediately recognized as my German guilt complex around people of Jewish faith. So he was like, "Well, have you killed any Jews? Have your parents participated in the Holocaust?" And he triggered all my buttons, and I was emotionally really, really about to explode, until he diffused the situation and said, "Are you Catholic by any chance?" And I said, "Well, not practicing, but that's the tradition in which I was raised." And he said, "That's what's going on. You're asking me for forgiveness, right?" And I said, "Well, I didn't think of it that way, but now that you're framing it this way, yeah, maybe that's what I would like to have for us to continue our interactions, that you forgive me." And he said, "Well, did you do anything to me?" I said, "No, I didn't." "Well, did your parents do anything to me?" I said, "No, they didn't." "Did your grandma?" "No." So he said, "This is your Catholic Christian way of dealing with whatever you perceive as guilt. So you're asking me to forgive you for something that you didn't even do." So, and he educated me that in the Jewish faith, forgiveness works differently than it does in the Christian faith, right? So my concept around transgression or guilt and forgiveness did not align with his, and we had a really, really good conversation around how we collectively deal with the perception of guilt, whether there is one or not, and how forgiveness can be issued or declined. And at the end, we all had a good laugh, and he made me aware of some of my hang-ups, and we're still friends.
Yeah. Well, I think, this can really come down to a business level too. I mean, we talk about culture in business, and many people that we work with are asking us directly sometimes, what can I do not to screw up? What can I do not to actually get to the point where I make a mistake and I have to ask for forgiveness? And I always respond and say, well, I'm the wrong person, because I'm not going to be able to stop you making mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Yeah. And I think that even if you do come at it with that, you lower your ego and say, I'm willing to make the mistakes, but then I'm also willing to ask for forgiveness in the right way, in maybe the culturally sensitive way. And then understand that sometimes people won't give you direct forgiveness. It won't be forthcoming, and don't think that that's something that's going to give you the release, but you're going to still be able to move on.
Yeah. And there's a distinction in many languages about being sorry for something. As I model it in the intro to this episode, when I say I am sorry, that expresses my feeling of unease about something that happened, or that something that I did. Feeling sorry is different than asking for forgiveness, right? Feeling sorry is, hey, I pity myself for something I did wrong. However, asking you to forgive me is, I give it out of my hands, right? It's not within my emotional or cognitive control anymore. I am relying on somebody else to make peace with me, or look past whatever transgression I had. And in many Western cultures, it has become almost a cultural norm or behavioral norm to throw away a line like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, pardon me," or "Didn't mean to. Hey, won't happen again." That isn't forgiveness, right? This is simply putting up a defense of, I think I did something wrong, and whether you forgive me or not, I'm already moving on. But that didn't close that loop between two people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, tell us in the comments, what is your point of view on forgiveness? How do you ask forgiveness? How do you expect forgiveness? What is the perception, whether it be a personal setting or a business setting? We'd love to know. And please give us your feedback in the comments. Send us an email. All the contact details are scrolling along the bottom as usual. And
here they are.
Always are they? Are they? Did you? Oh, I thought you were.
Here they
are. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, and short, sharp, and we apologize it's so short and sharp. Please forgive us.
But forgive us, please, for the brevity.
You can go back to whatever you were doing very quickly. Thank you very much, guys.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.